This year I uploaded over 100 videos packed full of information to try and help you out as much as possible with your print-on-demand business. And in this video I've done my best to compile 22 of the, in my opinion, most helpful lessons out of those videos, so you don't have to watch them all for yourself. And if any of you who are watching this video already saw all of the clips that I'm going to share with you in this video, then definitely let me know in the comments. I would be really curious to find out if there's some loyal fans out there who literally watch all of these videos throughout the year. And if you're watching this before Christmas or before the new year, then a Merry Christmas to you and have a Happy New Year. Failing at print-on-demand is necessary. During your first year, you will fail a lot, and it's good because when you fail, you improve. So the more you fail, the better, essentially. You kind of have to see the word fail in a different light. For example, the letters could stand for first attempt in learning. If your designs aren't selling very well, try out different niches or learn how to create better designs. And if that fails again, then try getting better and better, try different strategies, try different tools until it works. And when it works, copy what works and still keep on improving yourself. Lesson number 2 is one that might help a few of you out, or at least open your eyes a little bit, and it's the fact that most of my best-selling shirts are original designs and not a copy or recreation of already existing best sellers. And don't get me wrong, I definitely think that getting inspiration from bestsellers or recreating some bestsellers can be good, and you can have success with that. I have done that a lot in the past as well. But for having like really successful best-selling t-shirts, usually the best method is to come up with something more original or be the first to have an idea. It's definitely the hardest sort of design strategy to take, but I did want to just make you aware of the fact that for me, from my experience, the most success I usually see with more original ideas. A lot of them also just never sell, to be honest. There's definitely a high percentage of designs that you think might be a good idea, but just never see anyone buying it because there's actually no interest or no one finds it as funny as you do. But if you do actually sort of stumble upon a really good idea, or at least an original design in terms of layout and creativity, then you definitely have a higher chance of getting more sales in the long run, rather than just copying what everyone else is doing. All of the designs you create, I'm guessing many of you have created like hundreds of designs. They're all like, in a sense, like ticking time bombs. Many of them will never go off, but some of them might suddenly, even like 2 years later, go off and get you a lot of sales. And especially whilst we're moving into Q4 and whilst the Christmas shopping begins, those sort of stories or instances can happen more and more often or more likely. So all of the designs you create, you might feel like you're barely getting any sales, but trust me, they're like ticking time bombs that can eventually go off. Next up, I've got a quick tip for you in regards to uploading your t-shirt designs, and that is how many colors you select. Now, a lot of people select as many colors as possible. You have the option to choose 10 colors. I used to do this a lot as well because I thought, well, the more colors there are, the more likely someone's going to find the color that they like and make a purchase. But a lot of times this could actually be hindering you in making sales, because if you have a lot of choice, more choice than you really need, it's going to make it harder for some people to actually pick a color. And then with this sort of overload of options, they just click off and they don't end up buying. If you only give the customer some of the most popular colors that most people like, such as black, asphalt and navy, then they only have 3 choices. They think, oh, I don't really like grey, but black looks good. And they go for black and they're done. So as you can see right there, there's not much thinking that has to take place to make that choice of finding your color. If there's 10 options, someone might sit there for 5 minutes thinking, oh, which color should I choose? And they'll end up not choosing the t-shirt at all because they can't make up their mind. So definitely try and stick to sort of 3 to 5 colors. Royal is also a popular one. Another very important reason of why you shouldn't quit is the compound effect. This is something I've talked about before, but I have to reiterate it again because I think it's really helpful for beginners. This compound effect concept is very common among businesses. The way it works is that in your first year, or when you're starting out, the growth that you experience is the slowest. This is why it's so hard to get started. It's really difficult initially to start growing your sales, but it's not a linear curve that only grows at this slow pace. Once you get into your second year or your third year, this curve can suddenly exponentially jump and sort of snowball. You could call it a snowball effect as well. If you roll a tiny snowball down a hill, it's going to start off very slow, and because it's so lightweight, it won't really get much traction or momentum. But as soon as it reaches a decent size, it's going to accelerate and keep picking up more and more snow and turn into this massive, powerful force that rushes down the hill. Definitely bear in mind that your first year is usually not a good reflection of how print-on-demand sellers perform or how print-on-demand businesses can do. It is just the start, and you have to stick through that second year usually to really feel the benefits of all of your work. So now that I've covered the copyright side of things, I'm going to explain to you more about trademarks. The two are definitely not the same, even though people might often interchangeably use the words and say, well, this phrase is copyrighted, when really they mean it is trademarked. So a trademark is typically either a logo or a phrase that's been registered with an official trademark registry. These exist usually for different countries, so there's one for America, there's one for the United Kingdom, and there's also an overarching one for the European Union. Getting a trademark doesn't happen automatically like copyright, but you have to actually file a trademark registration, which costs money, and it can take up to a year or even longer to register this. What's quite important to note is there's different types of trademarks out there, and there's a website called TM Hunt or Trademark Hunt that explains these further. So first of all, we've got the text trademark. This is, in my opinion, the most powerful one. It is a type of trademark where there's no particular claim to font style, size, or color, meaning you're not allowed to use this trademark regardless of the form it appears in. A good example would be just do it. You can copy this phrase whatsoever in any form. Next up, we've got designs, which is usually a drawing, illustration, or a design, and the registration in this case protects the exact design, which you're not allowed to duplicate. Kind of like copyright, but it's a bit stronger because it's actually registered. And lastly, there's the typeset trademark. This one is without the standard character claim. It basically means that the phrase is trademarked, however, in a certain way. So if you don't copy this specific way, then you should be fine to use the word or the words yourself. This one is going to be about sub-niches. So let's say, for example, we've got the overarching niche of gaming. Now, what you don't want to do is target every single gamer out there when you're creating your designs. What's going to be a lot more effective is entering sub-niches such as girl gamer, virtual reality gaming, or PC gaming, just to name a few examples. That way, you have way less competition and a more targeted audience group, which really increases the likelihood of you getting sales. What defines a good niche? And to make this easier for you, I've come up with a framework which I'm going to call the fishing lake analogy. So basically, in this analogy, we've got three components. We've got the lake itself, which is essentially the niche or the search term that you've entered into Merch by Amazon. Then we've got the fish. The fish symbolize the customers, or in our case, we often focus on the BSR numbers. So if there's a lot of t-shirts with low BSRs, then that means there's a lot of customers and a lot of potential within this search phrase or within this lake. And then the third component that we're going to focus on is the fisher. This symbolizes the competition in this niche, or the amount of search results. Because if there's lots of search results, there's lots of fishers already at this lake that are trying to catch the fish. And to further explain the fishing lake analogy, I've created 4 examples of very common niches that you're going to see during your research process. So the first one, and also the worst type of niche, is the one where you've got a lake with a very small amount of fish, meaning not many t-shirts with low BSRs, or any BSRs for that matter, and you have a lot of fishers at this lake. What does this lake symbolize? It means a massive niche, let's say 10,000 search results. Even just looking through the first page, you barely barely see any t-shirts selling well. So this is a niche that you just want to ignore. There's no potential here, there's barely any customers, and there's also way too much competition or search results. The next best niche, which is still not great, is a lake that is completely filled with fish. There's lots of potential, lots of customers, but the lake is also crowded with fishes around it, so the competition is really high. This could be a niche like gaming, for example, which has tons of search results, right? It also gets tons of sales, so there is potential here to get sales. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is very unlikely, considering that there's so many fish here. You'll struggle to find a spot at this lake, and even though there's lots of fish, if you can't get a spot, you're not going to catch any fish. Moving on to the third lake, we've got the good niche. In this lake, there is a small amount of fish. There's not that many t-shirts with low BSRs. However, there is also a small amount of fishes. So the niche that you have to imagine here is, let's say it has 700 search results on Amazon. You see some t-shirts with good BSRs, but also some with no BSR. But considering that there's so low competition, it is one that you might want to create designs for. So this one, not many fishes, not many fish, but if you join this lake, you still have some potential to actually catch something. And the last lake for this example is the perfect one. This is sort of the dream niche, golden niche example, which is very rare to find, but if you find one, then you've done well. Because at this lake, we've got tons and tons of fish, loads of t-shirts with low BSRs essentially, and there's hardly any fishes. This is what you want to get as close as possible to. It's going to be hard, but you don't need to find these sorts of niches every single day to succeed at print on demand. So essentially, this would be a niche with less than 1,000 search results and lots of shirts selling decent BSRs, meaning sort of between 100,000 and 1 million, I would say, are good BSRs. Yeah, so in this case, obviously there's not many fish, there's low competition, not many search results, but there's a lot of customers, so the potential is really high to easily get sales here. Next up, we've got adding texture, and I don't mean adding texture in the traditional sense like you do with vintage sunsets, for example, where it is, rips or a grunge texture and it is cut out from the design so the t-shirt color shines through. I do mean a bit of a different type of texture here, and this is the example I've got for you. You can do it in different forms, but basically these are dots that just sort of scattered around the letters or the edges of the letters, and I think they create a very nice sort of vibe and extra bit of texture, extra bit of interest on our text design. And you can even take this a little step further and add some extra elements. Right here we've got some flowers and these sort of highlights, and that once again just add something a little bit more to each letter and make it look a lot prettier. If we go back to the starting point, that's what we had to begin with, very boring. Even with the shadow, although it looks more interesting, there's not much to it. But if we go down here with all of these little extra added dots and shadows, which are really easy to create and just move around, if you've grouped them, it does make your text really stand out and look a lot better. The next thing I would say is don't use irrelevant keywords. So for example, if you're using the word funny in your title, make sure it's actually a funny design, because if it isn't and people want a funny design and they search for it, they see yours, they don't laugh, they don't buy it, it's not good for you, and Amazon might stop promoting your t-shirt. What's very important to get found is repeating your most important keywords in the title, description, bullets, and the brand name. I don't mean spam them multiple times in the title, put the same word 4 times in your feature bullet. I just mean repeat it in each one of the fields once. Always do trademark checks and make sure not to use banned words. You can use Productive for this to help you out with it, but also the content policy changes over time. So what might be fine now could not be fine in like 2 years down the line. So always make sure to stay up to date with the Merch by Amazon content policy. Tip number 2 would be to saturate your niches. And what I mean by this is, let's say you've entered about 20 niches so far, and after a few weeks you've noticed that some of these niches aren't getting you any sales, whilst others have gotten you just a handful, maybe 2 or 3, and then there's a few niches let's say 1 or 2 niches that are getting you regular daily sales, or maybe a sale every other day. What you want to do now is to saturate those exact niches. And the way to do this, as an example, is let's say one of the niches has got 500 search results on Amazon, and currently you have 10 designs uploaded to this niche. So you're making up about 2% of the search results. However, let's say you create another 50 designs or even another 100, and you just have different variations of designs that are targeting different people, or maybe cross-niched with some popular topics like coffee or alcohol, something like that. And that way you're now making up maybe 10 to 20% of the search results, giving customers way more potential to click on one of your listings and to purchase it. Mistake number 2 is expecting results after just 1 month of work and creating a relatively small amount of designs. This is something that I see a lot of people saying, that they've put in some work, they've created some designs, but even after a month has passed, they've not had any sales. The reality is that your first designs are going to be your worst. Not just the designs, but also the listing and the niches that you found. I saw a really good analogy for this recently, or a good example, whereas let's imagine you've never played basketball before, you're not naturally talented at it, but you get the chance to play with the best basketballer in the world, and he shows you how to throw the ball properly to, have the highest chance of hitting the basket. He shows you all of his techniques, and you start throwing the ball. Do you think you're going to hit the basket just because he showed you? Of course not. Maybe you'll throw it 100 times and you'll hit it 5 times out of those 100, but because you've never played basketball before, you need that repetition and that practice to get to a certain level of hitting the basket more consistently. This obviously applies to many things in life, including print on demand. Even if someone shows you how to do it properly, your first attempts are going to be bad. That's just the reality. Yes, some people might be lucky and get a lot of sales in the first couple of months, but for most people it's not going to be the case. You also have to realize that with print on demand, the stuff that you upload, it oftentimes just doesn't sell in the first month. It's still the same case for me, where the new designs that I created in October, they're not really selling much, maybe like a couple of them, but I've created hundreds of designs. I'm expecting to sell them at some point in the future, at least a fraction of them, but for now, like straight away, nothing's really been selling. It's very, very normal. It takes some time for the marketplaces to index your products, to show the products to customers, to figure out, well, the algorithm figures out which customers are interested, which ones aren't, and then eventually you'll get your first sale and maybe some more regular sales afterwards. But in your first month of uploading designs, it's very unlikely to get sales, especially if they are your first designs ever, which are probably terrible. I'm sorry to say that, I don't mean to offend anyone, but that's just how it is. When you're starting out with stuff, you need to still put in the reps to gain the experience, to get better, and to have a higher chance of getting sales with the things that you create. Method number 3 is thinking outside the box. And this one is arguably the hardest one, because you have to come up with completely new, unique ideas, but also it can be the most successful method as well, because you're coming up with new designs that no one's ever done before, and if they're good and people actually like them, then you have no competition. So this method is hard to teach. I can try and give you some tips right here. So first of all, the easiest way for this method would be to actually know a niche really well. So this might be hobbies and things that you do yourself that therefore have a lot of knowledge about. For example, I find it really easy to come up with design ideas for dash hounds or sausage dogs, because I own a sausage dog myself and I'm around it all day long. I know its characteristics, and also from talking to other dachshund owners, I know the similarities and opportunities of what sort of designs to create that sausage dog owners might find funny. So in your case, think of hobbies, interests, animals, or food that you know really well, and where you know what people who like these certain topics would find funny or interesting, and that way you make it easier for yourself to come up with design ideas. Another way of how to do this method is to cross niche, and you could just lay out lots of different cross niching topics and then think of ways of how to combine them in a unique way. So for example, cross niching topics are often things like coffee, beer, wine, countries, different national and international holidays, different family members like mum, dad, grandpa, grandma. So these different words and phrases, topics of interest, you can cross niche them with the topic that you're entering to try and come up with something unique. But anyway, let's move on to the first design, just to give you some examples. This one is happiness is gardening with my dog and a glass of wine. And the reason I created this design is because I noticed while doing my research, there's tons of designs that have dogs in them. So obviously there must be a lot of people who like to do gardening work while their dog's around, it's running around in the garden, having fun with them. And I also know from experience, I know an old lady who likes to garden a lot, and she really likes wine. So retired people who probably spend a lot of time gardening, if that's the hobby, might also be drinking wine at the same time. And this way we've got 3 different topics. We've got dogs, gardening and wine to target a more specific audience, and I don't think I've seen a design with this specific cross niching, so I thought I'd create it, I'd just try it out. And that brings me on to the next point, which is definitely something that most successful print-on-demand sellers do, and that is not shying away from taking risks or investing money, and that is into the business. So this is something very important. It's going to set you apart from your competition, meaning other print-on-demand sellers, because a lot of people would just not want to spend any money on their business, especially if it's not making a lot of money yet, which is totally understandable. I get you. I'm not saying if you've just started with print-on-demand, you're 1 week into it, you should buy all of the tools and spend as much money as possible. That's not going to help you. I mean, within reason, over time, keep investing money into it to help you, once again, optimize your workflow and just save time. And you're going to get a return on investment in most cases. Like, yes, sometimes you might spend some money, you won't like the tool and you will have, I don't know, wasted a month of subscription fees, or you might invest some money into Facebook ads and you find out that after spending $100, actually you didn't generate any sales, which is really annoying. But you've learned something. You might have learned that you need to improve your marketing skills on Facebook, or that maybe Facebook advertising just isn't for you and it doesn't work for your shop. There's always something that comes back from it. There's a return on investment usually if you spend money on your print-on-demand business. And if we think about it, I'm guessing most people watching, you probably have something in your life that you spend quite a lot of money on that doesn't give you any return on investment. So for example, there's a lot of people who spend a lot of money on clothes, and for the most part those people don't need any more clothes because their wardrobe's already full. They just really like having something new to wear every other week, and therefore keep dumping money into that habit of buying new clothes. And there's other topics, right? How often do you spend $20 or $30 on a takeaway, which it gives you like 10 minutes of pleasure, 10 minutes of joy of having this takeaway food. But besides that, it's not going to get you any return on investment. Most of the time it's unhealthy, so it's not even good for your body. Yet, how easily do you spend $20, $30 on a takeaway or on fast food? Whereas the same amount of money invested into your business could get you like maybe 2 months of a subscription to a tool that will actually save you a ton of time and help you make more money in the long run. But you just have to change your mindset and realize that you might be taking some risks there, yes, but it's going to help you progress and help you being more successful in the future. Another strategy that James Clear discusses to make your new habit more enjoyable is to make it more satisfying. Let's say you don't enjoy research, on top of reducing the task to a 2-minute sort of goal of just opening your software and using it for 2 minutes, you can then add in something that you enjoy. So for example, just put on some of your favorite music, because you can listen to music while you're doing research. It's not really going to distract you. That's something that I do quite often, and it almost gets you pumped up a bit and excited, like when you're at the gym and you listen to music. That can really increase your performance, and it makes the habit more enjoyable, and you're more likely to then
repeat it or to carry it on for longer. One strategy that I've used before when uploading to merch for Amazon, because I do upload manually to merch, which can take forever. If you're in a high tier, you have a lot of upload slots and it takes like a few hours to fill them up every day. One way that I've used before to keep myself motivated is I made myself a smoothie. I just put it on my desk and I said every 10 or 20 designs you can take a sip of this smoothie. So I'd quickly get through these different design uploads and then I'd reward myself with a drink from my smoothie, and that would carry on until it was empty, like, I don't know, half an hour later. And that way I made that sort of boring task of uploading designs more enjoyable.
And you've probably heard advice before of people saying, set your goals really high, aim really high. But in my opinion, that's very, very terrible advice when it comes to print on demand, because if you start out, you have not much clue about design, you don't know much about researching, and you're getting used to all of the different marketplaces and videos out there, chances are 3, 4, 5 months down the line, you will not be anywhere near your goal of $1,000 per month. And you'll feel really demotivated, you think you can't do it, and you'll probably just give up and quit. Let's imagine you're just starting out. Maybe you'll set your first goal, or your first level in a sense, to $10 per month. Once you've reached that, which is definitely doable, then you will try and level up to the next step, which would be $30 per month. And from there it jumps to 60, then to 100, then 200, and it carries on escalating this way until the final goal in the end is $1,000 per month. And with this mindset applied, in my opinion, most of you will be way more successful than if you were constantly obsessing over getting to like $1,000 per month, which is obviously a massive hill to climb. Your focus should be hitting smaller goals and also realizing the fact that you're making progress. From my experience of selling on multiple different marketplaces, the potential for sales is definitely the highest on Amazon or Merch by Amazon and Etsy. Just the amount of traffic that those two websites get is massive compared to some of the other ones like Redbubble, TeePublic. Can compare traffic on websites on a website called SimilarWeb. I'll leave a link to that down below in the description just in case you're curious. It is quite interesting to look at these numbers sometimes. But besides the fact that there's a lot more customers on Amazon, Etsy, it's also harder to sell on them in a sense, because on Amazon they're really strict with who they let in, right? Not everyone who applies actually gets accepted into their program, and even if you do get accepted, you obviously have to tier up to actually have an impact in terms of how many designs you can upload, which then also takes a while, and a lot of people might struggle or give up before they reach a higher tier. On Etsy, you don't have automatic fulfillment. You have to work everything out with a separate third-party print provider like Printful, Printify, and this is like another big barrier to entry, which will stop a lot of people from that type of print-on-demand business. Whereas marketplaces like Redbubble, TeePublic, Spreadshirt, they're really easy to upload to, they're really easy to sign up to, there's no real requirements, so that means there'll be way more people uploading, selling designs, and the customer base is comparatively lower. So this is why, in my opinion, and from my experience, the potential for income is definitely a lot higher when it comes to marketplaces like Amazon and Etsy. Like, don't get me wrong, I have also seen a lot of success and made a lot of income with sites like TeePublic, Displayed, Tostadora has been a good one for me. But overall, I think for most of those sort of secondary print-on-demand websites, throughout the year, you'll probably just be sitting at like $100 to $200 per month, which is still a nice amount, but I don't think many people really go above and beyond the $1,000 per month mark very often. Whereas on Merch by Amazon, that's obviously quite reachable or doable. You know, a lot of people do those sorts of numbers. But yeah, if we speak about the secondary marketplaces, I think that's a lot less likely and a lot less realistic. And a few issues that I wanted to point out for the design that I want to improve on are, first of all, the hierarchy. Now, what do I mean by hierarchy? Basically, if you look at this design, where do your eyes first go to? And I'm guessing for most people it's going to be a different answer, because there is no real hierarchy that shows you what you should be looking at. For example, the text is all very evenly sized and there's no emphasis on any specific words that would tell you what the design is about very quickly. Colors is another thing. There is tons of different colors in here. We've got the purple and pink going on with the axolotl. We've got some brown owls. We've got green right here with the cauldron. Then different oranges, like the pumpkin is very strong and orange, and the text at the bottom is more faded. So it makes for a color scheme which is a bit all over the place, which once again makes the design harder to process. If someone is scrolling through the results on Amazon, like the search results, and the design is not very clear within a second, then they're just going to scroll past. And legibility is another key thing here, where I am an axolotl. Whilst the font has a cool pattern in it, it definitely hurts the legibility. Like I can barely read this if we zoom out. Some of the letters are also dark, like a dark brown or grey sort of colour, which on a black background is not very easy to read. We definitely made improvements on the old design, made it easier to read, gave it some hierarchy, reduced some of the graphical elements to just the most important bits, and therefore heavily increased the possibility of people not only noticing the t-shirt but also clicking at it and potentially buying it, which is obviously everyone's goal. So I hope this was able to help you. Step number 5 is uploading to more marketplaces, and I think there's a lot of people out there who've sort of got into their comfort zone of uploading to Redbubble or uploading to merch for Amazon. Maybe you've even got 2 marketplaces together, but you don't want to expand because it's going to take more time. You have to learn new stuff. However, you're really holding yourself back. I often hear people say, I'm in tier 10 on merch for Amazon. I can't create evergreen designs. They're not worth it because I don't even have the slots to upload them. And I always say, well, just open a shop on TeePublic, open one on Spreadshirt. There's lots of websites that are relatively easy to upload to. You can use the same designs that you have somewhere else. You can use the same listings. If you're in tier 10 on Merch by Amazon, that's going to give you a lot of practice, and those designs that you've uploaded to other marketplaces can then also save you time in the future once you get tiered up, because you will already have some designs ready. You will often find that maybe a certain design doesn't sell on Merch by Amazon, however on Redbubble it actually gets sales, and vice versa. Something that doesn't get sales on Redbubble might get you sales on Merch by Amazon. So whichever marketplace you're selling on at the moment, it's not the only one you should be considering. Keep expanding, keep trying out new ones. Your best platform might be still waiting for you. You might be holding yourself back by only trying out 1 or 2. I'll give you an example here for some extra motivation. I've been uploading to Displayed for about 2 years now. Whilst the start was really slow and I wasn't really getting a lot of sales, this year during Black Friday I managed to hit $150 in royalties in just 1 day, which is amazing. I never thought I would hit that, and it's all thanks to Flying Upload, making it really easy to upload to Display. Now, I don't think everyone should invest in upload automation right from the get-go. As a beginner, you can definitely try out marketplaces like TeePublic, Redbubble, Spreadshirt just manually because they're easy to upload to. If you've already expanded to some marketplaces and you're getting more regular income, then investing into upload automation can definitely be worth it. So no matter what stage you're in with your print-on-demand business, just trying out new marketplaces can really help expand your horizon, your experience, and also increase your income. Then you have different styles, so you could filter by warm, you could filter by cold, and there is vintage color schemes right here. There's also gradients. You can click on rainbow, which obviously has lots of different colors in one color scheme, but this one looks quite nice. For example, that would maybe work well for a unicorn type of design, just an idea. Then over here you have topics as well. Christmas, which obviously would be handy for Q4. You have Halloween themed color schemes. As you can see, lots of possibilities right here to filter and find new color schemes for your designs. You even have sunset, very useful for the typical vintage sunsets, which do sound really well on many different marketplaces. So you can browse through here and find some new color inspiration for those. And let's say you found a color scheme that you like. What you want to do is click on these 3 dots over here, and it'll bring up a menu. Now you have lots of different options, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to export the palette, and you get plenty of different options right here. One that I would recommend using is SVG because it will make it easier to sample the color afterwards. You probably know that it takes quite a while to get successful with print on demand. It's not a get rich quick scheme, And because it takes so long, a very valid step that a lot of successful people take to get there quicker is to delay gratification. And I know this is very easily said and not very easily done sometimes, but if you, for example, struggle with video games, not struggle, but you play video games and you spend a lot of time on them, just add up the time every single week that you spend playing. Now imagine if you spent that exact time working on your business, how much faster would you reach the goals that you have envisioned for your print-on-demand business? Probably a lot faster. That doesn't just go for video games. There's many other forms of instant gratifications which might be holding you back from print-on-demand success, because the longer it takes you to reach your goals, the more likely you're going to give up. All of these sort of things like scrolling through social media for an hour every night, it's holding you back from the actual success that you're sort of longing for and that would actually give you more joy than just scrolling through memes all night. The next point, which is very, very important for getting more sales, is design quality. Because chances are, if you're not a graphic designer and you're just starting out to learn about graphic design, this could be massively holding you back from getting regular daily sales. You might be able to pick up a few sales here and there from people who are not really too bothered about design quality. They just really like the phrase that you used. But to appeal to a broader audience and also to get some best-selling designs, you're going to want to improve your quality, because it's very rare that among the sort of bestsellers on Amazon you see t-shirts that just have a really bad design on them. But don't worry, there's a lot of options that you have to get around this problem. So first of all, you could obviously take courses on websites like Skillshare to learn about the graphic design software that you use and just get more tips and tricks that way, or browse YouTube videos. These are the things that I did when I started out to learn about Adobe Illustrator. I watched YouTube tutorials and Skillshare courses to just improve my knowledge and my skills. However, if you really don't like designing, you've tried it out and it's really not your thing, you find it very boring, then there is a shortcut around this in the sense of just using pre-made graphics. So there's some websites out there that have public domain vectors and graphics, clip art, which you can download and use in your t-shirt designs for free. I've made a video about one of these websites just showing you how to find these files and how to download them. The other option would be to use a paid for service. That way you get the guarantee to have lots and lots of high quality illustrations and graphics. I, for example, really like Bexels. I recently just made a video about their website. It's a tutorial that walks you through how I use them to find graphics for different niches, how to get them, to download them, and to use them in your designs. Another thing that's very important for the quality of your designs is fonts. You shouldn't overlook font selection. It's definitely something that can massively impact your sales. There's plenty of options out there, once again, in terms of free fonts or paid for ones. I have an entire playlist on my channel which goes through many fonts that I love to use on a daily basis, and there's also lots of free ones in there, so definitely worth checking out to increase your design quality and increase the chances of you never waking up with zero sales again. Mistake number one is a very common one, not just among beginners, but I think among people in general, and that is that you shouldn't compare yourself to people that are ahead of you. I know there's a lot of YouTube videos where people share their recent sales or their income reports, and yes, those videos are fine in the sense that they show you what's possible with print on demand and they can be motivating. But I think for most people watching, especially those who are getting less sales, it's often either demotivating or it makes you feel really low and like you're not going to reach that same sort of level of sales. What you should be realizing is that comparing yourself with other people is a game that you can't win, because no matter how good you get, no matter how many sales you get, even if you get to tier 20,000, there's always going to be people that are doing better, getting more sales, are in a higher tier, and you will always feel demotivated by comparing yourself with others. The thing that you should be focusing on instead is comparing yourself with yourself. Let's say you look back half a year and you notice that now you're getting twice as many sales a month than you did half a year ago. That is a really good comparison, and it should be really motivating, and it should also be what you're focusing on. Now, for beginners, this can be hard because that sort of progress, you usually see that more long term. If you've only been going for like 1 or 2 months, then obviously you don't have much data to compare yourself to. But in general, definitely don't compare yourself with others. There's always someone doing better, always someone doing worse than you. So comparison is the thief of joy. You don't really get many benefits from it. Thank you very much for watching. If you've made it this far in the video, then just leave a comment down below saying 2023 for some extra good luck moving into the next year with your print-on-demand business or with any other goals you've set for yourself. And if you want to learn how to scale up your POD business during 2023, then I've got all of the answers for you in this video right here, where I share my 7-step process for print-on-demand success.